I have to ask you, Rabbi, a lot of people, I think, will say some of the biggest people that are anti-Israel also happen to be Jewish. And it's a disconnect. How does that work?
It's shameful. I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for it. You know, somebody once said that the tribes were not lost. They were bar mitzvahed, and then they disappeared. And how many times we find that that's the last connection some people have with the Jewish community, with the Jewish world. So we have to do a much better job in terms of education. But I always wonder when people praise, you know, the left or the extreme left, where are these places that are so favorable to Jews and Christians? Venezuela, that's a good place for Jews. Cuba is a good place for Jews. So I think it's a matter of trying to have them recognize the truth, but let them read the truth not written by Jews, because they'll say you're biased. Let them read books written by non-Jews, by those who would not have a bias according to their logic. And the other thing is this: look at how Christians are treated in a lot of these places. Don't just look how Jews are treated.
Oh,
if that's what they do to Christians,
look at the Coptic Christians in Egypt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, honestly, if you've ever been to Israel, the amazing thing is you walk the streets of the old city. You will go into places like the Church of the Last Supper, and it is all it's Islamic phrases on the walls. It has been defaced. You will see. I noticed that there are a lot of synagogues that have been bombed and destroyed. Yeah. But I see in the Christian section, I see in the Jewish section, I see the minarets. They're still standing. They're not being used, but they're still standing. There is a, with some, not all, there is a willingness or a desire to wipe everyone else out.
Glenn, the great thing about Israel today is that the Christians are free to worship in their faith. The Jews are free to worship, and so are the Muslims free to worship. If we lose Israel, we're going to lose all of our freedoms, and all the faiths will lose their freedoms except for one.
I mean, it
faith.
really is, to me, it really seems, I mean, it is the old saying, first they came for the Jews. Yeah. I mean, you're the first. Right. You're not the last. Right. You're the first.
Right. It begins with Jews, but doesn't end with Jews.
It never does.
Yeah. And you couldn't have this kind of demonstration between 48 to 67. Right? Jews weren't allowed to go to the wall. They could see the wall from afar, but they could never pray there. Why? Why weren't Jews allowed to go to their holy sites during all these years? Because there was a form of intolerance that is, it's amoral, and yet there are those who claim to be religious who refuse to recognize the religious validity of another group.
I will tell you, America, that I know a lot of people, because I've read the mail, boy, it's strange to be me, because I am apparently an anti-Semite Jew lover, which is amazing.
Drive you to drink?
He'll drive you to drink. I'm an alcoholic, been there, done that. But we put this together, and it is happening in August, called Restoring Courage, and it has nothing about it. Honestly, you will see courage in the Israelis when you get over there. It has more to do with our courage. You can find all of the information today at glennbeck.com, but as you walk through that city, you will feel a power unlike anything I've ever felt before. And then let it sink in that if the lines go back to 1967 and Jerusalem is divided, the entire holy city, the entire old city is lost to the world. That is a powerful, powerful loss. When we come back, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, he is a man that I spent time with in Jerusalem last week. He'll join us for a few minutes. Back in a minute. Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, he is the Chancellor of Or Torah Stone and Chief Rabbi of the city of Efrat. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, he is the Executive Vice President, New York Board of Rabbis, and David Barton is here. He is the founder and president of Wall Builders, and Pastor Tom Mullins. He is the founding pastor of Christ Fellowship Church in Florida. Rabbi, how are you?
Great.
I saw you last week in Jerusalem.
Much better place.
In Jerusalem or New York?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, I was going to say, you say New York, you're a liar. We spoke, and last week when I came to Jerusalem, I spoke to a lot of people, and everybody here was telling me, this is crazy, don't do it. You said, basically, people have got to stand together and they've got to come together. Why?
This is the second chance for the world. Between 1939 and 1945, the Jews stood alone. And when there's a madman who stands against the Jews, it starts with the Jews and it ends up with the entire free world. We saw it with the Nazis. We saw it with Stalin as well. This is the second chance. Israel's on the line now.
I saw what the leader of Hamas said this week, where he was saying the Jews are worse than vermin. They are they're worse than any bacteria. And I thought, boy, this is Goebbels again.
This is Mein Kampf, a page out of Mein Kampf.
What I found what's interesting is they're very clear as to what they mean. We don't want to think that they mean that because we try to camouflage, we try to cover up and say, they're really not saying that. Hitler was very clear, Hamas is very clear, Hezbollah is very clear.
I think we're still in the warm-up of what's coming. And they're very clear. Yeah. They are annihilate and kill every Jew on the planet.
How sad is that? Hitler was better, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
what a sad commentary.
Evil is evil.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
What I'm trying to say is, our eyes weren't open, because I read Mein Kampf, and with retrospect, it's absolutely clear he meant it. These guys are horrifying. And what makes us think that they don't mean it, especially just less than a century away from the last time it happened?
And Al-Qaeda says the great Satan is America. In other words, it's not just the Jews or Israel. It's America. It's the free world.
What you said is it's a second chance for the world. And I think that's significant because it's not about Israel. Israel's about the world. And I really think Israel's a litmus test for everybody.
It is.
If you get that wrong, if you're wrong on the Jews, if you're wrong on Israel, everything else is wrong. And that is a chance for the world to stand right.
So what does this mean? Because I've gotten a lot of mail this week after we announced it. Some of it is good. Some of it is profoundly evil. And some of it that is just kind of bad just says, great, this is what Israel needs. A whole bunch of Americans and people from all around the world coming while they're in a crisis. What does this mean to people in Israel?
I think it means the world. I think we do feel very much isolated. Yeah. And I've got to tell you, from my point of view, one of the miracles that's happened with the ingathering of the exiles and our return to Israel is the fact that the Christian world has held out their hands to us. And there are times during the past intifadas when nobody was coming to visit us, certainly not to visit me in the territories, in the settlements. But the Christians came, and it meant a great, great deal.
And I find that hate mongers have no problems forming coalitions. Hate mongers find each other. They can have different views on other things. When it comes to hating Jews, hating Christians, they are together. Where are we going to have the opponents to hate mongers? That's why this kind of demonstration is a manifestation of goodness over evil.
When I was at the wall last week, they were celebrating their independence, and I thought, I've never felt the kind of joy that the Jews who were celebrating felt about their independence, because they lost their state. We haven't lost ours. So I've never experienced that joy. And a man came up to me, and he recognized me, and he turned around and he came up to me and he shook my hand, and he said, "Thank you for saying what you say." He said, "We feel very alone here." And I had sensed that, and it was such a powerful statement. Again, the world has the opportunity to either say, I don't see what's happening in the ghetto, or standing up and saying, no, 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 never again. It's powerful how alone Israel is in the region.
I just must tell you, I don't really feel alone, because to be alone with God is to be with a majority of one. And we feel that way. Yeah. And especially having returned to Israel after the Holocaust, we know that God is with us. And I think there is a certain profound sense of security. I think it's for humanity's sake, even more than for our sake, because it's the same issues at stake now.
It's us.
Yeah, it is.
It's us. How do you deal with like your children in Israel when you have people say, like Hamas, you're worse than vermin, we're going to kill you all, drive you into the sea? How do you do that with your children? Explain that.
To a certain extent, that's been the genius of Judaism through the last, certainly 2,000 years of terrible persecution. Don't forget, we make a blessing every morning, thanking God for having chosen us from all other nations and given us the Bible. We feel that we gave the greatest gifts to the world, which through us, which God gave to us. The Ten Commandments, fundamental morality, the idea of freedom.
That's right.
America is founded on these ideals. And that's what people are fighting for when they fight for Israel.
You know, there was a poll taken, Gallup poll, about the happiest people in the world, and Israel is number 8 in the world. Now here you are hurting, and yet you're in the top 10 of being happy. So to be happy and to be in pain at the same time is a marvelous, marvelous statement about faith in humanity and faith in God and faith in one another.
You know, I will tell you that I've been to Israel twice, and each time I have felt more safe there than any other place I've ever been. And it has nothing to do with guns, it has everything to do with the people. They are wide awake, and it is a powerful, powerful place on earth. Back in just a minute. We're back with Rabbi Joseph Potosnik and David Barton, and Pastor Tom Mullins is with us now. I want to get to the Black Robe Regiment here and some more questions, but I want to pick up where we were just talking during the break. And that was, I can see why there are a lot of people that are Jewish that do not trust Christians. I mean, there's a lot of Christians I don't trust as a Christian. But you know, the past, when I was over, over at the western wall of the temple, and you go underneath, and you see some of the things. There is one giant doorway, the closest you can get to the Holy of Holies. You know this story, David? You want to tell the story?
No, you get it.
It is where the Jews went after the Romans came in, or the Crusaders came in, and said, we have a place to pray, and it's the closest to the Holy of Holies. And very sacred thing. Well, they were walled in by the Crusaders, and the last thing they saw was a torch being thrown in to burn them all alive, and the cross, as they were walled up. Now, when in 1967 happened, and the Jews could come back in, they tried to take that wall down to recover the bodies. They found a few bodies that were all charred and exactly what they expected to find. But then the Muslims went crazy and said, you're trying to dig under the Temple Mount, and so they had to wall it back up. It's a wildly profound place to see. So, I mean, I understand people saying, what's your motivation here?